You're listening to All Things 3D, where we talk about the world of fabricating, designing, and capturing in the third dimension. No resistance, no
Hi, everybody. Hi, this is Mike Balzer, and this is All Things 3D, 3D in Review for Friday. I think this is the 6th of November. And we've got some great guests today. We've got James again, who's been a regular in the past, as well as Fred Kahl, the great Fredini, who's going to give us an update on Google. Sadly, our friend Chris is off in New Zealand. I don't know about sadly. He's probably enjoying himself. He's taking a long-deserved 3-week vacation there. Hopefully he makes it back in one piece. And what are the bad guys in the Lord of the Rings? I don't remember. There's several of them. Hopefully they don't get him. But on that note, yeah, we've got obviously another jam-packed episode here. And if you just saw that video there, if you've been a follower of the show, you know that we've spoken to Jonty in the past. And what he's done, he's a, what would you call it, a 3D sculptor. He has created 3D sculptures and then miniaturized them. And we're not just talking little tiny things like this guy here. We're talking about things you can't see with the naked eye. And using some techniques. Let's see if I can bring up his website real quick so that, here we go. And in this case, it's called The Fragile Giant. And we just went through the video, but essentially this is a human hair with this little tiny sculpture on it, this little elephant here. And one of the reasons he did this, I don't know what group he's working with, is to kind of bring attention, and I've noticed other people doing this, to what's happening to our elephant population. And essentially this here. They're being poached for their tusk, and literally they're going extinct. So I think this is a great way to bring attention to it, and obviously I applaud this, and also very cool 3D processing. But the sad thing is, unless you've got an electron microscope, you're not going to see this, or maybe a very, very large magnifying glass. So if you want to know more about it, you can go out to the website, jontyhertz.com/fragile-giant, and learn more about it. It'll be in our show notes. But if you're a geek like I am, some pretty good, cool technology from Würzburg that was used in order to create this. It's funny, his previous story is when he was talking about it, he didn't actually have any evidence of his 3D prints because somebody touched the slide and they were destroyed. So hopefully that wasn't the case in this one. Well, that's about it for our theme of the day. Let's go right into our guest, which is the great Fredini. We've had him on before, but you know, not only is he sporting a new do there, but you know, he was out here on the West Coast with us, and I don't know, he's got something pretty exciting to say. You know, in the past, and I'll give a brief summary. One of the reasons we've had him on is he did something really cool. Almost, gosh, 2 years ago when we had you on. Actually, our second episode. This last month was our anniversary. But essentially, he does 3D scanning using, what would you call it, consumer grade, prosumer grade scanning, you know, the lower cost. And he's pretty much made a name for himself and a business scanning people full scale and printing them out. And part of his goal was recreating, was it 1918 Coney Island? What was it? Park.
1907, 1914.
Okay. Geez, I don't know where I came up with that date.
Okay.
So, with no further ado, Fred, how about giving us an update and a little bit about yourself for those who are new to you?
First off, thanks for having me back. And so I just got back from California. Just flew in last night, and boy, are my arms tired.
Didn't I just hear that?
I don't know. Sorry, I couldn't help myself.
Well, wait a minute. Didn't you just like put a jetpack on? Why are your arms tired? No, kidding.
No. So I was invited out to an internal Google conference. It was called Google UXU, and it was everybody in the user experience ladder at Google, all getting together, and they kind of are, comparing notes and talking about best practices and so forth. But I was one of 3 keynote speakers for the conference, and I delivered a talk based on what I did last year at San Francisco Maker Faire. It was a talk about the history of technology as entertainment. So it kind of centers around looking at, we're in the 3rd industrial revolution, and I kind of look back at the 1st and 2nd industrial revolution. The first being about mechanization, the second being sort of the steel age and ushering in the era of transportation. So looking at how entertainment from those technologies was created as a lens for where are we going. And, I talk a lot about the Luna Park project because I really see it as a lens. I see Luna Park as a metaphor for the societal change that happened about 100 years ago, and looking at, sort of we're going through similar changes now. So I was nervous as hell for the talk, and it went over really well and got really great feedback. So I was very happy. And then we ran Scanorama for their mixer, and I scanned about 50, 60 people there, and it was really a big hit. So I was very happy, and I feel like somebody dropped a bag of hammers on me today, but I feel good.
Well, you got a big smile on your face, so it sounds like it went great. And sadly, I didn't really realize you were going to be doing this mixer. You should have received a package while you were gone of the NEODi mount for the iPhone 6. It would have been great for us to have that all set up. Yes. That's kind of weird to see your package on. Oh well, but. Hopefully, maybe after the show here, I can give you a few tips to get that up and running. But yeah, it would have been fun for you to be able to actually use that in your scanning process. But you have an excellent rig. Essentially, it's a hand crank vertical lift and a motorized turntable. Is that still the same setup that you have?
The same setup. It's shipping FedEx as we speak. I'm actually doing a big event for Pfizer's Innovation Conference here in New York City this coming week. So
wow.
We'll see if I have a little time this weekend. I'm hoping to get the mobile version of the scanner at least ready to play with, and we'll see where it gets. But
okay. Well, I'm here to help you with that. Obviously, a little more attention on my part would be great. But more importantly, I've been with you for the last 2 years, and you've stuck with your, I think, what were you using? Either a PrimeSense or still the original Microsoft Kinect, right?
Yeah, I started with a Kinect. I moved to a PrimeSense, and then I moved back to the Kinect. I just get a cleaner scan with the Kinect, and I didn't notice that much difference, to be honest. So it's a couple more wires, but I had more multiple shells that kind of overlapped with the PrimeSense, so I'm back with Kinect.
Great. Now, are you still using the same software? If I remember correctly, you had chosen a particular piece of software because it's worked well for you. Are you still using that same software?
Yeah, I use Reconstruct Me. I've definitely played with Simplify 3D a bit, but my experience has been, I've also played with 3D Systems Sense, and I do use that sometimes on busts. I will use the Sense for that, but I found that anytime you have software that kind of does the making the model watertight for you, there's a certain amount of decimation that happens, and you kind of lose a little bit of detail, so I prefer to do that process manually. So I'm using Reconstruct Me still, and when you get in a high volume situation, it's great because we can really pump through scans as quick as possible.
Well, one of the things that you have at your disposal now is my BioStep capture application, and it does not do any watertight. In fact, it really doesn't do anything. It captures it, converts it to an OBJ, provides you a texture, and then emails it. In the future, it will do things like keep them internal so that you can either hook it up with iTunes or some other application and pull them directly off, or actually load them up onto Dropbox, so that way you can stay out of the email system. But currently the prototype that you have still uses email, and it will cache them, but I found that when we went to iOS 9 it broke the cache, and I had a few people disappointed because I expected to be able to come back, get on Wi-Fi and deliver them, and they disappeared. So sadly Apple isn't always reliable.
I have it installed, and hopefully this weekend I'll get a little time to get everything hooked up and play around.
Okay, well, you got my email, and we can do a little bit of either a Skype or a Google Hangout to show you a little bit more. In fact, I'll give you a little tutorial before as far as installing the new mount, but with your skills, it probably shouldn't be anything at all. All right, well, let's get right into our first news item, and you've got a couple in the medical thing that I think are going to be very interesting.
Yeah, oh, you froze here. Have I lost you?
I think he could still go. Sometimes his end freezes.
Okay, so I'm going to share my screen. Oh no, I want to share. Okay, are you seeing my screen? I can't hear anything.
I'm seeing me.
Okay, so the first article, I pulled up a couple articles this morning, just wanted to have something to contribute to the show. So the first article was about a study at the University of California, Riverside, and they had just by accident discovered some information about toxicity of 3D printed objects. They were studying some single-cell organisms. What were they called? Zebra? What are they called? Some kind of single-cell organism, and they were using a Form 1 printer to print parts to study these organisms, and they discovered that the Form 1 prints were highly toxic to these creatures. So they found that if they exposed them to even just an hour of ultraviolet light, it reduced the toxicity of them. But I thought that was kind of interesting, and you know, I don't own a Form 1, and I've always wanted to get a stereolithography machine, but you know, it's interesting. I was always scared of the amount of post-processing that you have to do to bathe the prints and everything, and just thought it sounds like a lot more work, so I haven't gone there. But it's something to be aware of, and certainly if you're going to have these things in your house and be touching the prints, we might want to think about a workflow that involves curing them with ultraviolet light.
So I should be back now. Is that correct?
You are.
We hear you.
I apologize. My actual streaming production, which has been very stable for me, died just a moment ago, so I don't know what the issue was. So, but thank you, James, for just plugging it along. So, you know, I've known this for some time because I actually had talked to them because, as you're probably aware of, I had actually printed. Let me bring up my screen. There we go. So essentially, I don't know if you can see these. There's some partial green in them, but this is a set of my teeth. And one of the things that in one of my episodes is I work with my local dentist who uses an iTero scanning system. And what we did is we took that scan, and then I used my Form Labs to print them. Well, I had found out during the process that this, as you mentioned, is a highly toxic material, and so I've asked them, are they going to have an FDA-approved version? And as far as I know, that still hasn't occurred. Now, in the SLA market, some of the higher-end devices do have some FDA-approved materials for this purpose. So did you find that out as well, Fred?
I didn't see anything about that in this article on 3Ders, so not sure.
Well, I know they're out there, but they're not for any of the consumer or prosumer, and that's what I consider the form lab. So yes, that is very important. It's not like I'm going to put this in my mouth or anything, but it kind of. However, in saying that, what dentists are doing is they're taking and they've got a material that you can fire, and because it provides low, what is it called, residue. Burnt particles, so it's clean, and then you create a mold from that, and from that you can use materials that are non-toxic. So that's the direction they're going. But the thing that I found in using a form labs versus the standard milling process that most dentists use is that it's still incredibly slow, and the milling process still provides more precision. So I don't think CNC is going to go away anytime soon, even though it is a subtractive process, at least in this market. So, yeah, so I'm glad you brought that up. I think a lot of people need to be aware of that there aren't really a lot of FDA-approved materials for additive printing, and so if they're planning to do something, I do know that there's some PET materials out there, but even those don't have the label of FDA approval. They just say that they're safe because they're PET materials. Have you found that, or have you had requests yourself, Fred, to make anything that can be consumed or used as a, let's say, a drinking or something of that nature that could be worn internally?
I haven't had a particular request. I met one dentist who had an invention that he wanted to create, but you know, it was more like a party conversation, not a real job.
Okay, well, thank you, Fred. So let's kind of move on to the next item that I have here, and that is this little guy here. Little guy. He is full-size, 3D printed robot, and I have to thank James. He's the one that brought this to my attention. I don't know if this has been in the news, but it is now. It's called InMove, and it's done by a French designer who's also had a hand in my friend's product, the Bionica, which he was with me at TEDx in Madrid, Spain, showing it off. And I think he may have, was he at the Google user interface? Because I think he may have won an award or very close to it for getting money to actually fund his bionic hand. Literally, he used servos, and I think Arduino, it's gotten a little more sophisticated than that, but it's very cool. But for some reason, this guy looks familiar. I asked him to come on, but he says he's extremely busy. I guess he's got a daytime job. This is kind of like his hobby.
Quite a bit of a hobby.
I'm about to say, he's probably like me, never sleeps. But yeah. So have you seen this, Fred? What do you think of this?
I actually know this guy. One of my when I first started scanning, he was doing a project to make figures for a soccer game, and I scanned my son in various poses and sent him the scan files, and he printed them out for some kind of soccer game. So we're friends. We actually hung out at San Francisco Maker Faire, and I have a scan of him with InMove I can pull up here if you want.
Yeah, go ahead.
Hold on, I'm gonna let me share my screen here.
And while you're doing that, I'm going to pull up my 3 videos.
So here's Gail with the robot.
How funny. So he had that in San Francisco. Maybe that's...
He was moving around throughout the space, so he has it on a little sort of wheeled tripod thing. It's pretty sophisticated robot. The project's a couple years old. I know that it responds to voice commands and all kinds of stuff. He's got quite a lot of material on it, and there are a number of people worldwide who have built them as well.
Okay. Well, I'm going to play this in the background. I guess there is some sound along with it. So you can go ahead and talk over it. So I think it's obviously matured over the time. But look at the flow of the movement on this thing. I mean, it's very graceful. One of the things that, if you go out to his website, you'll see that pretty much he says that, hey, if you can work with Arduino and a few servos, then you can move forward and print out all of this. The only thing he requests is a 12 by 12 print bed, which actually is fairly large for a 3D printer. Fred, I think the one behind you has that capacity, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't think I have one, so that could be something that would be a showstopper for some people. But I don't think all the pieces would require that. I think maybe the torso or the chest area. So yeah, I was at the Maker Faire for 3 days, but obviously, as you're aware, Fred, there's a lot to cover. I didn't get to you till the last day as well. And by the way, I have to show you. If I have it on the phone, I'll bring it up during my Spelunker in the Tech Cave. But I'll show you what I did with the scan that you did of me.
Oh, nice.
Which I think you'll find a little fun. But hopefully, I'll have it on the device. If not, I'll do a little video and show it to you. But essentially, I took your 3D scan and put it in my VR world. So, and I guess some people recognize it. Say, hey, that looks like you. So obviously, if you're into robotics, you're into 3D printing, you can't go wrong with this. And this is basically off-the-shelf stuff. James, you brought this to my attention. Obviously, this.
Yeah, one of the things I'm interested in, as you know, is kind of 3D printing and robotics. So one of the fascinating things about this project, not only is it cool, but also it's open source. So on his website, I just kind of peruse, a lot of the pictures and get ideas on how to print and how to put things together. And as you can see, there's a lot of screws and parts to this, and it's actually a good thing to look at just to see how things get together if you're building something that's automated.
Well, and obviously it's exceptional. So the next time we come on, James, is this going to replace you?
Yes, definitely. We're going to have to put a beard on it, though.
Well, I think you can probably manage that. Well,
He's had a bunch of people worldwide build these, and I know there was one at Maker Faire that had a giant mohawk, so it was totally doable.
Well, obviously the dexterity and the movement is exceptional. There has also been a lot of efforts now in AI and neural networking that I could see some people using this as a shell and moving forward and approaching it from that perspective. I wish I had time. I'd like to do this. Maybe I'll create a VR version of that. Oh, well. Pretty cool. Thank you, James, for bringing that to my attention.
I wanted to show a couple of things on their website, too, that I was talking about. As you can see, there's pretty intricate parts to this, and it kind of shows you, how you can get a servo to, a lot of times it's about making a servo move in a different direction. So it kind of
James?
shows you. Yes.
Can I move about 2 inches away from your mic? You're a little hot.
Okay.
Thank you.
So, it shows a lot of the parts. Like, I think this is a roto worm that kind of goes through. So the servo churns it, and then it churns this bigger gear. So it kind of shows you how to do gears, and there's all sorts of interesting things on the website. Even if you're not looking to build something this big, which would take a lot of time, it does show you a lot of open source ways to build in general. So I actually thought it was pretty nice in that sense too.
Yeah, it's a great learning experience. So yes, again, thank you, James. So if you're interested in moving forward with this, I'd like to see the results. So, or if you've done it already and you're watching the show, please send me a link. I'd love to see some images of it. Okay, well, on to the next item, which is 3D viewing apps. One of the requests that I get is, okay, I've scanned something and I want to send this to somebody, but how do they get to see it? Well, there's a couple of options, and one I'm going to leave to the end of the show. But the other one is this one here, which is a product called Open3D Model Viewer. And currently it's only available for Windows, so if you're a Macintosh user, there'll have to be other sources. But it pretty much allows you to open any type of file that is a mesh. And I have already downloaded it and used it on another machine, and I find it very efficient. It's very compact and small. It's what they call donate ware. So essentially, you can download it for free and then donate, which I highly encourage. And it pretty much allows you to view. I think there's a single light, so it's not going to be something fantastic. But a lot of people have chosen MeshLab in the past, but it's like a Swiss knife and is really difficult to manipulate. There may be some other tools out there that I've used, like NetFab, but I find this one to be an elegant, low-cost viewer that if you wanted to send it off to people. And the other thing that I would suggest to people is Sketchfab, which then you would have to export your file to it. It'll be an option in my capture program in the future, and it's available in other 3D scanning programs. And I'll talk a little bit about them later, but I've already mentioned them several times on previous shows. It is kind of, what would you call it, the Instagram of 3D. Fred, would you agree? I don't know if you're a fan of Sketchfab, but if you want to show off your 3D, they have probably, in my opinion, one of the best web. I think it's WebGL.
Yep.
Yeah, I think WebGL now. It also has some hooks if you want to do VR with it, or just a stereo, so you can use it with your Oculus and look at it in 3D. I have suggested some things now. We'll see if that will occur in the future of being able to actually walk around your object, but that's still in its infancy. But it's another option. So, Fred, do you have any suggestions for people? I mean, obviously, you scan a lot. You've got 3D models. How do you get them to your clients?
I usually just send people a download link, and then the email will include a link to MeshLab. I like MeshLab because it has the iOS viewer. I guess and Android. There are iOS and Android versions. You make a good point about Sketchfab. You know, there just aren't enough hours in the day. So I may have a Sketchfab account. I just haven't really used it for posting files at all. So.
Oh, I think you need to, Fred. I really do, because I think you'll soar to the top. You've got some great models, and I think a lot of people would be interested in looking at them. You could be a star on Sketchfab. Well, one of the things is, in order to post a lot of files, you have to have a pro account, which I don't think is that expensive. I think it's $40, $50. But I use it extensively. It allows me to distribute files. As mentioned, a lot of the applications upload automatically to it. They have a great lighting system, and if you're familiar with texturing in 3D World, they now use environment texturing, which is the big thing in gaming. That's built in. So there's a lot of new features they keep elevating, and then, as mentioned, I've got a little surprise at the end. So those of you who are using Sketchfab and you're not aware of this, I think you might be interested. Maybe even Fred will take an interest in it for later on. So that is where are we at now? I think Scanner Darkly. You know, this is another item that James brought up for me. And I'm going to go directly to Dr. Thomas, I think it's Whalen, who, interestingly, and I think this is more the focus after reading it, is he now works for Oculus Research. So what has this guy done? He's created, I don't know if you're familiar with SLAM, but he's created a new way of doing kind of, I'll just say basically stitching. And I have a little video that I'll show that kind of describes it a little better. If you can see it there. But, you know, Fred, you're obviously very familiar with this. You can take a Kinect or a structure sensor and use it to scan a room or an environment. But one of the problems with that is, how do you keep your stitching consistent going from one object to another? And as you can see here, he's using this in order to scan this entire room. But notice how nicely the textures are being overlaid, the mesh. And actually the mesh looks pretty good as well. Very impressive. I'm obviously no doubts. I know why Oculus has him. If you can apply this same type of technology, this SLAM functionality, to the external world, you can utilize this as a mechanism to move around in it in a VR world. How do I know this? Because that's what I have been working on for the last 9 months with the occipital structure sensor, using that to scan the environment in real time to provide multi-axis input. And so I've got some videos out there, but look at that. Isn't that pretty impressive? There are quite a few papers out there, so if you're a developer, he's got some open source libraries already for this, so if you want to start moving forward with it. I do know that the RGBD functionality, which is using the color camera along with the depth information to provide stitching, is already in use by Occipital. I remember Jeff doing a talk at Real 2015 for Autodesk about this particular process, and here's another example here.
I would imagine that Apple has something like this in the works, just with the fact that they acquired PrimeSense.
You know, I would think so too, but it's been so quiet, and I just sometimes feel they just kind of buried the technology personally. But you're right. Who knows? Apple is very mysterious, very quiet. However, all the SLAM people are elsewhere. They're either at Intel. They're now at Oculus. They've been at Valve. They've been at Google. I mean, they've been everywhere, but you don't hear about Apple. At least I haven't doing any hiring in this area. And you know, you need a lot of computer vision wizardry in order to do a lot of this. And this is not where, or at least I have not seen, this is where the brain power is going. It's not going to Apple. It's going to Oculus. It's going to Google. Obviously, Occipital has some stars. Intel has some stars. But I haven't heard a lot of attention from Apple themselves. In fact, some of the, we've reviewed some of the patents. The patents, are some as bad as some of the other patents that they've been awarded. Very simplistic. So there's not a lot of like evolutionary stuff like this that's going on. So going back to the site here are some of the papers that he's done. So if you're interested in this, want to learn more about it, here's a benchmark for RGBD visual odometry, 3D reconstruction, and SLAM. These are all open papers. All the computation.
Captured with it's with the Kinect or it's with the structure sensor.
I don't know. I actually sent him an email. I haven't received a reply yet, but as soon as I do, I'll bring it. I don't know what he's using, and his papers don't. It's more identifying the calculations and the formulas that he creates, but it doesn't actually talk about it. But the fact is that it's mobile like that. I'm assuming it's probably something like that, either a Kinect. But again, I didn't go through all the articles, so I don't know if it's identified in any of those. If somebody knows, please provide some feedback. But it does look like it's some type of mobile or compact structure sensor of some sort. Pretty cool, though, huh?
That's totally cool. Yeah, I want to mount it on a drone or something. And
actually, that is being done. So, in fact, I think that's one of the articles here. So. Thank you again, James. This is another feedback or input from James. Do you have any? Did you look into this, or you just saw it and sent it my way?
I just saw it and sent it your way because I knew you were going to be interested.
Yes, very excited about this. This is essentially where this technology is going. It's being mounted to quadcopters now or drones. It's being utilized in some other people's software to map rooms. One of my goals, and I'll mention it here, is to be able to use this technology and then immediately import it into a VR like Unity so you can walk around in your environment. So you record it and then go back and analyze it later as you're walking around in it. I played with it a little bit, but the quality of the room capture SDK from Occipital leaves a little bit to be desired. Nothing like this, so I'm going to have to look elsewhere. Currently, and I'll show some demo in a moment, I'm having more fun recreating things from either objects that are available through open source, through the Unity store, or my own creation, and creating environments. But I'd like to see more done here. As you're aware of, spherical cameras are becoming a big thing to create video. In fact, there was just an announcement today. What's the camera that they came out with that you can record multiple depth information, and then have images of that depth information. Gee, I can't remember the name of it, but it was mentioned today.
It looks kind of like a phone, or
I don't know. It looks like a. Oh well. Sadly, if it comes to me later on. But essentially, you record an image, but it allows you to focus on multiple points in that image. And they just announced today that they're coming out with a VR version of that, where you'll be able to not only focus on something in this spherical, but you'll be able to move around it. It's not supposedly cheap. It's going to be like thousands of dollars, but it'll be a full development VR system using their technology. I want to say Vovian. Does that sound right? You ever heard of Vovian? No? Okay. So the technology is Vovian. They've come out with something today as well. But yeah, I think there's a lot of work being done here. Very cool stuff. And that's pretty much our scanner darkly. And that kind of brings me into our VR area. And who's not a YouTube person? No,
I don't think there's anyone who's not a YouTube person.
I think everybody uses YouTube.
So who here has done VR? Who's used Google Cardboard? No?
I've heard of it.
Hands yet? Well, I'm going to have to change that for you, Fred. I should have put in, I forgot. I'm going to have to send you a pair of glasses or the NEODiVR loop. And I have not sent you the print files yet, James, so you can make a version of the NEODiVR Junior. However, you both have to try this. But the thing that they just identified today is YouTube now provides virtual reality on YouTube. And they have a channel now, and essentially what it allows you to do is it converts using the Google Cardboard functionality so that you have the actual optics distortion of the actual lenses that are in your Google Cardboard or other device that's Google Cardboard certified, and then you allow yourself to be able to pan around as they show here. So let's say the guy is taking a video, you can then convert it directly over, if it's shot properly, into a VR experience. And there are several cameras now, spherical cameras, as well as the V.360, which is what I own, which is a cylinder-based VR camera that allow you to do this. So essentially you record it, and then you can look around anywhere you want in the scene. And there's a company, Ryko, just came out with their next version. I can't remember the middle name, but it's an S. It's actually back-ordered now. They were already out of stock. It's a very compact. It's about this big. And you can put it on a tripod or just carry it with you. It does 20 minutes of HD quality or static images of 4K quality, and allows you to do this, exports it directly up to YouTube. So I have a feeling this is going to happen more and more. Obviously, I've been experimenting with it. You can literally go anywhere around the world. There's a lot of them out there. In fact, one of the things I think the reason they're doing this is that Google Maps, was it Street View, now has a VR component. So if you've got Cardboard, you can use Street View to actually look around your neighborhood or wherever you want to, full panoramic. So before you could just use your screen, now it's available here. Now we can actually watch YouTube videos, and they do have a channel. There's a link for it right here. So obviously there are tons of them, and it'll probably grow as time goes on. I have been a big fan of Google Cardboard as a developer, and I've been using it, and I'm trying to merge the tools so that not only can you use Google Cardboard to identify the Google Cardboard certified VR device, but marry it to the structure sensor so you can walk around with it. And that's what I've been working on. It's kind of what delayed my latest VR that I was going to have up on Android on Halloween, but it's been delayed. And only had one person ask me where it was at, and that happened to be my son. So I'm going to say some people are either more patient or they don't care. But James, it will be available, and you will have something soon to watch it with. All okay, right. So that's about it. Fred, I'm going to bring it back to you. You know, I know that you're full of tips. You know, sadly, Chris, the print whisperer, is not here, but I think you are an equal replacement as far as printing. I mean, you have probably put in, what, thousands of hours, tens of thousands of hours of printing and you probably have a tip or two on how to make this thing work. So if you could provide us a little information, share your wealth of knowledge, we'd appreciate it.
Sure. So I'm gonna. I was thinking about what should I share, and I think I'm gonna share my screen here, and let's see. You should see. You see my screen now?
I see it.
All right.
Yeah, that looks familiar.
So I'm on. I have Simplify 3D loaded, but some of this is going to work with other slicing tools. Some is particular to Simplify 3D, but I'm just going to share a couple tips on how I would go around setting up a print. So I'm going to pick. Let me see if I can find a good print. Here we go. So I scanned at Theater Bazaar in Detroit a couple weeks ago, and a lot of people in crazy Halloween costumes. So I thought it'd be good to kind of take a look at how I would set up some of these prints. So if you look at this print, you'll see this woman has got these wings on, and that's kind of a hairy thing to support with prints. So I thought I'd give a couple tips about how I would set up a print for something like that with a lot of overhangs and support material. Does that sound good?
That sounds good.
Okay, so the first tip I would have is, if we're going to have a lot of support on this material, let's just generate what the default support is so that we see that. So the first thing is, there's not a lot of support on the wings, and we're going to probably want a little more support. So by default, we can just change what the angle of overhang is at the threshold. Oops, wrong direction, sorry. So if I say instead of 45 degrees, what if I generate support for anything over 40 degrees? Doesn't really do what I want. I want more support on these wings way out at the edges. So I'm going to return it to the default 45. So again, this is a simplified 3D trick, is the manually placed supports. But the other things I'm going to show you here apply to any tool like Cura or whatever. So the nice thing about Simplify 3D, aside from the outstandingly great quality of the prints and the ease of removing the support material, is the fact that we can manually place supports. So I'm actually going around under these wings, and I'm just kind of manually placing support material all along it. And one thing, if you printed a lot with support, you might notice that, you know, these support materials tend to move around a lot as the print head is bumping into them. So I always find it's useful to kind of manually go and just sort of add a little extra material to kind of thicken up where those supports hit. And I would go and just kind of, here, let me see if I can get, I want to get something going off of her skirt to touch down on this. Where is this? Okay. So that's kind of the idea, is I want to add some more support material. Now, there's a problem that this gives us, though, is these supports underneath the build plate, you see the way they come way off the piece. There's the tendency is for those things, they're not very well rooted to the build plate. We want to get them to anchor better so that we don't have the support breaking off halfway through the print. Have you experienced this problem before?
I have, so let's hear what you've got to do in order to improve
I
that.
always print with RAS. Everyone thinks I'm crazy, but...
See, I don't like a wrap because the problem is peeling it off the bottom of this base right here, the raft ends up getting stuck. So the thing that I like is under Simplify 3D, the setting for additions is just a skirt outline.
Mm-hmm.
And I might even bump this down to so it's really close to the print, only a millimeter off. And I could add, let's say, maybe like, well, let's say 35 outlines. Let's see what that looks like.
So you thicken it up so that the skirt...
So the skirt goes way out. Now the other thing, before I do that, so I want to slice it, but I don't want to wait for the slicer while we're talking. So if we look around here, 35 might, you know, sort of just come to here, but it's not quite enough to really support these outer pieces. So the other thing I'm going to do is I'm going to import a little STL file that'll act as a base for this.
Okay, and that's what I've done before, is I create a little bit of layer to put underneath it, because I've run into the same problem. In fact, I'm actually a little more conservative on my supports, because, you know, maybe you've got a tip or two, but I find that cleaning those up are always a pain, especially if you have internal supports. I have always found to be difficult, so I try to design where my support structures are minimal. But, you know, I can see here with these wings, you don't have a lot of choices. So.
Right. So what I'm doing is I just have this disk that I've imported, and I changed the dimensions of it so it's only one layer thick, but it's going to give me a little root for this to anchor.
Now, when you say one layer thick, how about giving me an actual physical dimension?
Well, actually, what I did was I set it to be 0.2 millimeters thick. So it stays the same size. I turned off uniform scaling here.
Okay.
And I just set it to be 0.2, so 0.2 millimeters. So
okay.
Actually, a lot of times I print these at 0.1 millimeter layer height, but I tend to, you know, if I'm going to make a manual kind of raft like this for my support, I'll do it at 0.2. So I'm going to go ahead and prep that for slicing.
Yeah, go ahead. And what I'd like to do, I mean, obviously it does take a while, but, you know, one of the things that the power in which, and I'm a big fan of Simplify 3D as well, is that the performance of its slicer is very dramatic. A lot of people think Cura is fast, but in my opinion, I think Simplify 3D is faster. And what is your opinion, Fred? I mean, I know you've worked with several.
Cura, what it's doing is it's slicing in the background always. So every time you make a change, it'll start reslicing. So it seems fast, but Simplify 3D, I think, is, you know, certainly if you compare it to MakerBot Desktop, it blows it out of the water. But it's great. I probably could have placed a couple extra supports around her ears, but I just mainly wanted to show you how I approach anchoring supports, because that's been the biggest problem that I experience. So you can see here we have plenty of raft. I probably didn't need to give quite that much skirt on the print.
Now for our audience, I just want to let them know that he just sliced it. I mean, that was literally in seconds. So, I mean, if you've ever used some of the other slicers, it takes several seconds or even minutes. He's done. The slicing has already been done.
So you can see I probably could have gotten away with just doing it with the skirt the way I sliced this, as long as I gave it enough perimeters. But the helper disk thing is also really useful. I find that it's really a necessity to give some kind of anchor for these supports before you slice it. Otherwise, if you have supports coming straight off the build plate, you're guaranteed to have that stuff break off as things print. So that's my tip of the day.
Thank you, Fred. That's an excellent tip, and I have run into it too and came up with the same approach. So obviously, some things we think alike. Now, I do have another question for you. You've got a lot of supports on this, yet you have very clean results afterwards, after your print. What do you do in order to polish them up? Because if you know, it's like screws on models. You've got to do a lot of work to prep that. What do you do in order to remove all those supports and create a clean model?
Well, I'll tell you. Oh, do I have any prints here? Let me see if actually. I'm gonna go. Let me stop sharing, and can you see me now?
I can.
All right. So I just so happen to have exactly this print.
Gee. Somebody
And it's
must
got all the supports on it.
Oh.
You can see I had a helper disc on this side when I printed it, and the skirt I kind of already have peeled off. But you know, this stuff really comes off very quickly and easily. With Simplify 3D, I can really kind of like just peel this stuff right off. And the process of cleaning up the print, I might use a pair of needle nose pliers to peel it off, but the print breaks out of this really quickly and easily. So I'll have to. Anyway,
so something that I've got a pair of precise, what do you want to call it, micro dikes that I use, wire cutters. That is my tool of trade, and then I've got obviously a set of X-Acto knives and some jeweler files that I work with as well. Now, if I remember correctly, you work mainly with ABS, is that correct?
I do. So the trick is, once I get this stuff peeled off, what I am doing is I'll take a heat gun, and I just have a, do I have my tool bag around here somewhere? So I have a little mini heat gun that I use, and what I'll do is I will just blast the surface of the print. So anywhere where plastic might discolor, it turns a little white when you snap it, I'll just blast it with the heat gun, and it kind of fixes the color to be more uniform and just gives, you know, helps the surface be nice. And that works both with PLA and ABS, just to...
Yeah. Now, obviously, the melting point or the softening point of both of those are different, so you probably want to make sure that your gun is either not blasted as close or as long, depending on the material, too. Would you agree?
I agree, and I tend to just kind of like go back and forth with the gun, so I'm never just blasting it, and it starts, you know, you'll get people starting to bend at the ankles or something. But this was a Dexter costume from NEODiVR. He's stabbing her. So, but this hasn't even been heat blasted yet. It's pretty much ready to go as is. But I'll typically just blast it quickly. Any discoloration gets fixed up.
And another plus for Simplified 3D, one of the things that they really worked on in their last version is ensuring that those supports have a chisel edge, which allowed you to break them off easily. That hasn't always been the past in like MakerBot and others, where it was just like embedded directly into it, and they were a pain. And they've really put some effort. I've also noticed Formlab almost from the beginning has done something similar. In fact, you can actually redefine the edge, which has helped. But I found that Formlab still, like if you can see my little print here on the Formlab, now this is several versions ago. Sorry. Bring it back. Several versions ago, but I still have the supports on this, and this was more of a rectangular piece, but now you can control that so it's more of a finer chisel type point, and they break off a little cleaner. And Simplify 3D also used a similar technique, and it really has helped ensure that, as Fred has just attested to, that to break off easily and provide a cleaner edge to it. So, you know, if you're not on the camp, yes, it's not a free program, but I think it's well worth the cost, and, you know, many things that are well worth their use should benefit the developers with a little money. So
I'll tell you, the amount of time it has saved me in print cleanup is so worth it. I used to spend so much time with an X-Acto knife carving back supports and, you know, heat blasting it, breaking the print, removing supports. It's crazy. So yeah, it's well worth it.
So James, do you have any questions for Fred in this area? I mean, I know that you're working with Simplified 3D as well, and you know, this guy has been around from day one, so he's the guy to ask questions for. In fact, since you've got his email, if you want to wait till later, James will bug you. Just
when can you come over to my house to help me? I'm in Texas.
I don't know.
Okay, well, thank you, Fred. I called it Fred's Island, just because, you know, he's done so much at Coney Island, but I like that, Fred's Island. So I'm going to move on into, as I call it, spelunking in the tech cave. And, you know, again, I'm going to kind of promote my own products here and give a little bit more, even though I promised to have this available. Let's see, I'm going to go to my camera that actually shows the product. Even though I was planning to have this the demo that I'm going to show here in a moment for Halloween, I ran into some problems with the iOS end of it. You know, the problem with VR, is, especially if you're using stereo pairing, is that you have to have two images. And for some reason, I spent a long time trying to figure out why I only had one image. And I found that the problem for me is that I am trying to marry two disparate technologies. One, the occipital SDK, as well as the Google Cardboard, and they didn't play very well together. So I literally had to remove all the components. So if you're using the Unity 3D engine, keep that in mind if you're using SDKs from different companies, even though you may not actually be using them in your, what do you mean I call it, your level, they're still there and they do play a part. And they have suggested clean them out and then exit and then come back in for them to clean out those SDKs, and which was my problem. And once I clean them out, I now have a version that's only Google Cardboard. I'm still working on walking in it. I do have a version, but what I'm trying to do is the best of both worlds. That way you can use your Google Cardboard certified VR device and the structure sensor together, because I know, because I have multiple VR devices that work with the structure sensor now. I would like to be able to use Google Cardboard to automatically, through their little label, they've got a little QR code, which you can see. Oh, I thought I turned that off. Hang on a second. We'll remove color key. There we go. As you can see here, I have a little QR code on the side there. And all you do is you scan it with your phone, and it immediately knows, because I already put them in for the certification of this device, the optics that are used here, and the type of depth of field, not necessarily depth of field, the view level, and a few other features. So it automatically puts it in there. So I think it's kind of neat. And it provides a full library if you get it certified through them. So there's a ton of devices out there already certified. So that's one thing I didn't want to have to do each time, is manually put in the information for each. So with my other device, and these are the two devices I've been working on, this is the NEODiVR Loop, which essentially rests on top of any 5.5 type screen of a smartphone. So if you've got a 6S Plus or 6 Plus, or even on the Android side, the Note 4, Note 5, and now the new Google 6P, this thing will work great with it. I use the same optics that are in the Oculus, except I'm using glass. A little more expensive, but I think worth it. And it has also been certified through the Google functionality. And then right next to it, I'll push this out of the way, is the NEODiVR Junior, which is made specifically for the IPD, or interocular pupil distance of a child, which is different. And this, I think, is one of the things that Mattel was weak on. They tried to develop a product that kind of reached other markets, and I found that a sweet spot for child is about 5.5 centimeters, and they're using 6 centimeters, which is more adult. So it actually is not even adult. Adults should normally be about 6 to 6.5. So they made a compromise, and I think it suffers, plus it's a lot larger than my device. This is made specifically for the iPod Touch 6G, which is a very reasonably priced device for kids, plus it's in the Apple ecosystem, so you can control what content your child has, which I think is very important as well. So back to why I want to show this. And I'll have to bring it back up on my, where are we at? Here we go.
Whoa.
What? Okay, well that didn't work out for me. Well, so give me a moment here.
Did you want me to lead into something else?
Yeah, why don't you go ahead and talk about something else real quick.
Okay.
Normally, I should be able to go right out to Apple TV, and it's not working.
All right,
here we go.
so,
I've got it now.
Okay.
So,
Okay.
okay, I should be back on. There we go. Sorry about that. So we're going to actually launch the latest version of, I call it Graveyard, complete with sounds. It's already been set up. Now this is set up. If you've got your own glasses, you should be able to use this. Just put them up to the screen when you're watching this in YouTube. So here we go. Are we hearing the sounds?
A little bit.
Let me turn that up. Can you hear them now?
Oh, yeah.
That's better.
So there's a creaking of a gate. I'm using the Google Cardboard. I built in an actual touch-sensitive switch on it, and I'm using it to teleport myself. And so now we're inside the actual courtyard area, and the mausoleum there.
Wow, this is great.
And
did you model this?
Over there. Part of it. As mentioned, Unity has a great level of game assets. So some of these things, like the lamps here, I just pulled in. This ghoul here, I had to reanimate. Geez, he's coming towards me. This came from the skybox. Actually, came from somebody else. So if you're not familiar with Unity and you don't have a lot of modeling skills, there are a lot of things already available. If you are a pro, why reinvent something when somebody's already done it? So currently, I've got it to just teleport, but in the future,
you teleported away from the zombie?
I'm sorry?
You teleported away from the zombie?
Yeah, exactly.
Well,
because if the zombie gets you, that could be a problem. You know, hang on a second. I've got a delivery that's coming right in the middle of the broadcast. James, could you take over for a second? I'll be right back.
Okay. So one of the things I wanted to show, again, I'm more, my little projects I do are more robotic space. So let me go ahead and share my screen real quick. All right. Okay. So can you see my screen, Fred?
I do, yes.
Okay. All right. So I thought this Instructable was kind of interesting in the fact that it's using 3D prints to make this flower move, and it's making it move through compressed air.
Right, I'm back.
Okay. I'm talking about kind of artificial muscles that get printed in with 3D.
Sorry about that. Sorry to interrupt you, James.
Hey, no problem. I'm talking about artificial muscles with that are printed with 3D printers. So right now I'm talking about a flower that can open up with compressed air. The way that this person did it is they created a model. You can see that there's this air channel that goes all the way through and all the way to the end. Go down a little bit farther. You'll see it hooked up here. So you have your hose that goes through the compressed air, and then it comes into here. And this is how it normally is. This is a flexible, I think it's Ninja Flex is what he uses. So when you put air into it, this is what it turns into. It flaps out. So then he has a station that all these parts get put into to collect. Then he's got the flowers, plastic piece, and he kind of talks about how he seals everything, and he assembles the flower, and there you go. And then he goes on. This is one thing that he does, and then he goes on to talk about other ways to use printable models to lift things. So you can see here it's kind of a zigzag with air chambers. When you pump air into it, this is without air. When you pump air into it, it expands. You can kind of see this weight goes through this little slot here, and it can lift weight. And this, I think he said this is a 1-pounder, but this device here can lift well over 5 pounds, he said. So.
Wow.
Well, and you know, James, you have some special interest in this, right?
Yes, I do.
And hopefully at a later date we're going to find out more about that. I'll drop to my screen. So now I'm going to identify why I had to rush out of here. Fred, there is a new product out there. Are you familiar with the Intel RealSense R200?
I've heard of it. I don't know that much about it. So
I have the developer kit that I had purchased, and I played around with it. But the important thing is it's pretty much a structure sensor, all the sensors, except it uses stereo so that it's not as sensitive to external lighting as the sensor itself. And the big problem is that there really hasn't been a lot of software available for it from the developer perspective, but they're really pushing it. The other thing is, because it's Intel, they've had a lot of people with interest in building it into things. So I have worked with HP, and sadly it just came, so I can't do the open box, but it will be presented next week, and I present you, I don't know what they call it, it's the X something or other, but essentially this is their equivalent to the, it's the product up here, the equivalent to the, it's called the HP Spectre X2 of the, what is it called, the Microsoft Surface. And essentially it's a 12-inch tablet with a keyboard. But the important thing from my perspective, and one of the reasons that I am reviewing this, is that it has the R200 camera built into it. And so, like I said, I was hoping to have it earlier. I kind of complained and I said, hey, what happened? This was supposed to happen 3 weeks ago. So I got it today. Obviously, I'll be excited to look at this and see what's available. Sadly, there isn't a lot of software available for this unit yet, but yeah, I think it's going to be a very cool unit, and I'm looking very forward to reviewing it. So have you heard of this?
no, I haven't.
I haven't either.
So yeah, now from what I've read, it's using the Intel Mobile, the M series chipset, and a lot of people complain that it doesn't have the performance of the standard, what do you want to call it? I wouldn't say mobile, there's another name for it, but the laptop type compact chips. This is identified with an M. Some people say the performance isn't in the same category. It doesn't have discrete video, so it wouldn't be a great gaming platform. But if you're going to be using it for digitizing or for just essentially as a small compact, what do you want to call it, all-in-one type unit, keyboard / tablet, this might be the way. I don't know. HP's not always known for the best quality, so we'll see how this actually works out. Microsoft has gotten a lot of rave reviews for their Surface. Sadly, it does not include any 3D scanning or 3D sensors into it. But that may change in the future with HoloLens.
Yeah, so, I think it's a good product. I mean, I think I don't know where products has gone 3 months for the last 3 months, but I know 3 months ago I was looking for a good tablet that had some sort of keyboard like this that you could connect, and there just wasn't a very big market. There was, of course, there was products out there like the Surface and everything, but just nothing maybe in the middle. Maybe this would suit what I was looking for.
Well, this could be it, or a little bit more expensive. Microsoft also introduced, what do they call it? The Surface Book, which essentially is a notebook with a special type of hinge with and you might like this, a memory wire that when you push a button, it causes it to release it. So you have a tablet, but for the most part, it is still a tablet, not a tablet, a laptop type computer. And it's getting a lot of rave reviews too.
Memory wire.
Yeah. So you might want to look into it. I think I may have mentioned it on 2 episodes ago. So Fred, what do you use when you're on the road?
What for scanning?
Sure.
You know, I use my rig, or I have the 3D System Sense, so that plugs into a laptop. I know that the 3D Systems team has been using a Surface Pro as their capture unit. I'm really excited about finally having the iPhone 4S or whatever, 6S Plus and the structure sensor. So I'm going to play with that with your add-ons, so that hopefully maybe that might be my future mobile scanning rig, but we'll see.
Now, keep in mind when you're using it, not only can you do it using my app or theirs, or even Itzy's, which might be something to look at as well, which can do it all internally. Well, actually, I should take that back. Currently, Occipital does not support iPhones. It's going to happen soon, but they do not support it. Their calibration application, which was required to do color, is not available yet. However, like I told you, Fred, we'll work together in order to provide that functionality to you. Currently, it is only for the iPad, which has disappointed a lot of people because this should have happened some time ago, and it still hasn't happened yet. I don't know why. I've actually worked with beta versions of their new calibration app that actually had the NEODiVR mount case in it. So I don't know what the holdup is. Hopefully, it will happen sooner than later. But the other thing to keep in mind is that you can use this as a wireless attachment type device, well, I don't have it here, but you can use it with Skinect. Now, I know that this is not your application that you work with, but then I think Reconstruct also has a similar tool, if I remember correctly, to use wireless functionality. But what this allows you to do is use an iPad as a wireless scan device into a desktop. So you get the benefit of a high-powered desktop or laptop and using this. But I found with the new, and you just bought one, the 6S Plus, the horsepower behind this, I can get down to 1.6, 1.5 millimeter voxel size now, which is about the equivalent of what you can get out of the Restruct Me and as well as Skinect. It's noisy and requires moving these, as you probably are aware, the scan unit around a little bit to reduce that. But the fact that you can now do this in a small device, I think, a testament to Apple for creating a powerful device and also having the software that has that capability. So I think you'll be very pleased, and like I said, I'll work with you on it. But yeah, just think, even a year ago, to think about something this size.
Sure.
By the way, this is the new NEODiVR mount version 2 mount, which I will get to you later, which has a whole different sensor. It actually removes the bottom of the sensor and replaces it with a new version with the magnets built in it, so they're no longer on the case. And then you can actually use it for the bracket if you had an iPad. It's a much more flexible solution. Once the next prototype's done, I will get you that version. So
nice.
The version you have now is just kind of a to work with until I get that finished. Okay, well, normally this is a half-hour show, but I've run this almost to an hour and a half, so I got 2 more items to talk about, and then I'll call it a day, if you guys would like to. And I did mention I was going to bring up Sketchfab again. If you're not familiar with Sketchfab, you're new to the show, Sketchfab is a great place. It's kind of like the, I don't know, what would you call it? The name your image location, but instead of images, you work with 3D objects, and you can get a free account. I think the free account only limits you to a certain amount of models. You can get a pro account, which I think is like $40, which then you have unlimited models and some other features. But what they're running, I think starting yesterday, is the Star Wars contest, and essentially creating 3D content based upon multiple scenes, or any of the scenes from these particular episode 1, 2, 3, 5, 6, and then the death of Jar Jar Binks, so that's kind of funny. But literally trying to create a 3D scene. Here's an example here. If I click on it, and if you haven't been out to Sketchfab, it is very web friendly, and by using WebGL, let's see, yeah, here we go. I can actually move the objects around. This appears to be using some of the new environment textures. You can control lighting. I think you can have multiple lights, 3, 4 lights now. You can identify, let's go shadeless, see the difference there. So if you haven't worked with Sketchfab and you're doing 3D modeling, as I mentioned to Fred, start putting your stuff up there. You might have a lot of fun stuff that a lot of people would be interested in looking at. I know that I've seen a lot of stuff out here. In fact, one of the VR demos that I recreated was called Inside Van Gogh, based upon somebody else's work that I found because they did a little promo on it. That it was pretty cool. It's one of the things I think is really cool about VR is that you now have the ability to immerse yourself in something that you may never existed. So, and I'll give you guys a sneak idea of what I'm going to have out by Christmas, and I'm going to call it Fishbowl. But imagine an aquarium, but instead of watching it from the outside, you're inside it, swimming along with the fish. I don't know. Sounds like a fun idea. Plan to use the RGB camera and some shaders to make it look like you're inside looking out at the world through a fishbowl. So but all kinds of, your imagination is the limit. So if you're not familiar with Sketchfab, you've got some models, you want to do something for Star Wars, go ahead and sign up and submit it. Who knows, you might win. There's some great prizes for it. And then finally, calendar. Oops, wrong item. Here we go. Calendar for the month of November. We've got a few shows in Germany, 10th and 12th, in Munich, and then we got another one, 3D Printing in USA in November in Santa Clara. That's the second show in that area. And then there's another one starting in India on December 3 and 4. And then obviously they start to wean as the months go on, or the month of December goes on, because, I don't know, something about holidays and shopping. I don't know how they go together, but they do. Okay, with that, I think I've covered everything. Again, sorry for the endurance run again for another long episode. Thank you, James, for popping in, and hopefully you can join me again next week. And Fred, thank you for coming on and being part of the show. I know that it's always been a long journey coming from one coast to the other. Google couldn't have asked for another great, interesting person to come on and kind of promote this new, what do you want to call it, momentum, movement. What was it, the big word used before?
Physical photography? I don't know.
Now, Copernicus? Was it Copernicus? I remember in the video toaster days that they were using the name because, we shifted from thinking that everything revolved around the Earth to Copernicus saying, no, we revolve around the sun. And so maybe that's another shift in movement that we have coming, shifting from the big plants to being empowered as the individual. I don't know.
Yeah.
I'll shut up. Fred, you have the last word.
Thanks for having me on. It's always a pleasure to be here with you, and I love what you do. So
thanks, Fred.
Keep kick ass and be awesome.
And thank
nice
you, James.
You, Fred.
Nice to meet you, James.
Okay, 3D in review for the 6th of November. Yeah, 6th of November, 2015. Bye.